Have you ever felt that your mind is so exhausted that focusing feels harder than the task itself, as if your attention slips away the moment you try to hold it? In this audiobook, we will learn how to focus when your mind feels exhausted by understanding what drains mental energy, why focus weakens, and how clarity can be restored gently without pressure. Chapter 1. The nature of mental exhaustion. Mental exhaustion is not the same as feeling sleepy or physically tired, but a state where the mind has been processing too much for too long without true mental rest. Your thoughts may feel crowded, your attention may feel scattered, and even quiet moments may feel mentally noisy instead of calming. This constant inner activity slowly reduces your ability to focus on one thing at a time. When the mind is exhausted, it naturally shifts into a low-energy mode where it avoids effort and seeks relief rather than concentration. You may notice that starting tasks feels uncomfortable, maintaining attention feels difficult, and your thoughts drift even when you care about what you are doing. This is not a lack of ability, but a protective response meant to prevent further mental overload. Many people respond to this state by pushing themselves harder, believing that discipline alone will restore focus. Instead, this pressure adds tension, and tension consumes the very mental energy that focus requires. Over time, the mind begins to associate focus with stress, making concentration feel even more draining. Mental exhaustion often builds through everyday patterns such as constant thinking, emotional pressure, multitasking, and never fully disconnecting from responsibilities. Each unfinished thought leaves behind a small mental weight, and these weights slowly accumulate without being noticed. As they build, the mind loses the spaciousness needed for clear and steady attention. This is why you can feel mentally exhausted even on days when nothing obvious went wrong. Inside, your thinking feels slower, decisions feel heavier, and focus feels fragile, pushing you toward distractions that offer quick relief. Understanding this hidden exhaustion is essential, because focus cannot return until the mind feels safe enough to slow down. When you stop blaming yourself for poor focus and begin understanding mental exhaustion, you create the conditions needed for clarity to return. Focus improves not through force, but through reducing the inner load your mind has been carrying. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring the early signs of mental exhaustion that most people ignore. Mental exhaustion often shows itself through small signs that feel normal at first, such as losing interest quickly, rereading the same line again and again, or feeling mentally irritated without a clear reason. These signs are easy to ignore because life continues to move forward and responsibilities still demand attention. Over time, however, these early signals quietly deepen, making focus feel increasingly unstable and unreliable. One of the clearest signs of mental exhaustion is the constant feeling of mental resistance, where the mind pushes back against effort even before a task truly begins. You may sit down with the intention to focus, yet feel an invisible heaviness that makes starting feel uncomfortable and draining. This resistance is not laziness, but a signal that your mental energy reserves are already low. Another sign appears in the form of overthinking simple things, where small decisions feel surprisingly difficult and ordinary choices require more time than they should. When the mind is rested, decisions flow naturally, but when it is exhausted, thinking becomes slow and circular. This creates frustration, which further consumes mental energy and weakens focus. Mental exhaustion also affects emotional balance, making the mind more sensitive to pressure, noise, and interruptions. Small disturbances that once felt manageable can suddenly feel overwhelming and distracting. As emotional tension rises, the mind spends more energy regulating stress, leaving less capacity for clear concentration. Many people try to fix these symptoms by increasing stimulation, such as scrolling, multitasking, or filling quiet moments with constant input. While this may offer temporary distraction, it prevents the mind from settling and recovering. Instead of restoring focus, it keeps the brain in a restless state that maintains exhaustion. Understanding these signs is important because they reveal that focus problems are not random, but connected to how the mind has been operating beneath the surface. When you recognize these patterns early, you gain the ability to respond with awareness instead of frustration. This awareness alone begins to reduce inner tension and prepares the mind for recovery. Mental exhaustion does not require dramatic burnout to exist. It often lives quietly within daily routines and emotional habits. The longer it remains unnoticed, the more normal it begins to feel, making clarity seem distant or lost. In the next chapter, we will explore how daily mental habits quietly drain focus and why changing small patterns can restore attention more effectively than forcing concentration. Chapter 2. Why focus breaks down first. Focus is often the first thing to weaken when the mind becomes exhausted, because sustained attention requires more mental energy than most other thinking processes. When your energy is low, the brain automatically reduces effort in areas that demand patience, depth, and stability. This is why you may still be able to function socially or complete routine actions while struggling to concentrate deeply. The mind protects itself during exhaustion by shifting into a shallow attention mode, where it scans instead of settles. In this state, thoughts jump quickly, distractions feel stronger, and staying with one idea feels uncomfortable. This is not a malfunction, but a survival response designed to conserve limited mental resources. Another reason focus breaks down early is because modern tasks often demand uninterrupted attention while the mind is already overloaded. Even small interruptions force the brain to restart its focus repeatedly, which costs more energy than maintaining attention in the first place. When exhaustion is present, these restarts become harder, making focus feel fragile and easily lost. Emotional pressure also plays a quiet role in breaking focus, because unresolved emotions occupy mental space even when you are not consciously thinking about them. Stress, expectations, and internal pressure create background noise that competes with your ability to concentrate. The more this emotional load builds, the less room remains for calm and steady attention. Many people misinterpret this loss of focus as a discipline problem and respond by adding pressure or strict rules. Pressure tightens the mind, and a tight mind cannot focus deeply for long. Instead of restoring attention, this approach increases inner resistance and accelerates mental fatigue. Focus also depends on a sense of safety and calm within the mind, which exhaustion slowly erodes. When the mind feels rushed or overwhelmed, it prioritizes short-term relief over long-term clarity. This is why distractions feel more tempting when you are mentally tired, even if you know they reduce focus further. Understanding why focus breaks down first helps remove self-blame and frustration from the process. When you see focus loss as a signal rather than a flaw, your response becomes calmer and more constructive. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how attention can be supported gently, even when mental energy feels low. When your mind feels exhausted, it naturally tries to protect itself by saving energy, and focus is usually the first thing it reduces, because deep concentration requires more effort than simple thinking. Instead of staying with one thought, the mind begins to jump gently from one idea to another, because switching feels easier than holding attention in one place. This is why even sitting quietly with a single task can start to feel uncomfortable when your mental energy is low. Another important reason focus breaks down is that a tired mind struggles to filter information properly. Small sounds, background noise, passing thoughts, phone notifications, and even memories can all feel equally distracting, making it difficult to decide what truly deserves attention. When everything feels loud inside the mind, focus has no clear direction to settle into. Mental exhaustion also disturbs the natural rhythm of attention, which normally moves smoothly between effort and rest. In a healthy state, the mind focuses for a while and then relaxes briefly, allowing energy to recover. When this rhythm breaks, you may either push yourself too hard without rest or avoid focusing altogether, and both patterns slowly weaken concentration. Many people respond to poor focus by forcing themselves to concentrate harder, believing discipline will fix the problem. Unfortunately, pressure creates tension, and tension quickly consumes the little mental energy that remains. Instead of improving focus, this effort often makes the mind feel even more tired and resistant. An exhausted mind responds far better to calm and gentle support than strict control. When pressure is reduced and expectations are softened, the mind feels safer and more willing to stay with one task for longer. Even simple changes, such as working in a quieter space or giving yourself more time, can noticeably improve attention. It is also important to understand that losing focus does not mean your mind is weak or broken. Your mind is responding logically to exhaustion by reducing effort and seeking relief. When you recognize this response with understanding instead of frustration, you stop fighting your own mind. As tension decreases, mental space slowly begins to open again, and focus can return in small but meaningful ways. This process is gradual, not instant, and it depends on reducing strain rather than increasing effort. In the next chapter, we will explore the daily habits that quietly drain mental energy and make exhaustion feel normal without you realizing it. Chapter 3. Daily habits that drain mental energy. Mental exhaustion often grows from small daily habits that seem harmless on the surface, but quietly drain your focus over time. These habits do not feel heavy in the moment, which is why they are easy to ignore. Slowly, however, they reduce the mental space your mind needs to stay clear and attentive. One common habit is constant mental engagement without pause, where your mind is always thinking about something, even during moments meant for rest. You may be physically resting, yet mentally replaying conversations, planning ahead, or worrying about unfinished tasks. This keeps the brain active for too long and prevents real recovery. Another habit that drains mental energy is frequent switching between tasks. Moving quickly from one activity to another may feel productive, but each switch forces the mind to reset its focus. Over time, these resets consume more energy than steady attention, leaving the mind tired and unfocused. Excessive screen exposure also plays a quiet role in mental exhaustion. Constant scrolling, notifications, and visual input keep the brain alert and reactive, even when nothing important is happening. This continuous stimulation makes it harder for the mind to settle into calm focus later. Emotional habits matter just as much as mental ones. Holding in stress, avoiding difficult emotions, or constantly judging yourself creates background tension in the mind. This tension uses mental energy even when you are not aware of it, slowly weakening your ability to concentrate. Another draining pattern is expecting your mind to perform at the same level without respecting its limits. When you ignore signs of tiredness and keep pushing, the mind responds by reducing focus instead of increasing it. This is not punishment, but self-protection. These habits often feel normal because they are part of everyday life. You may not notice their effect until focus feels consistently difficult and mental clarity feels distant. Awareness is important here because you cannot change what you do not notice. When you begin to observe these patterns gently, without blame, mental energy starts to stabilize. Small adjustments create more relief than forcing major changes. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how to reduce these habits without disrupting your daily life. Reducing mental exhaustion does not mean changing your whole life or forcing yourself into strict routines, because an exhausted mind reacts badly to pressure and sudden demands. When you try to fix everything at once, your brain feels overwhelmed and resists change, which actually drains more mental energy instead of saving it. A slow and gentle approach allows the mind to relax and rebuild focus naturally over time. One of the most important steps is allowing small moments of mental stillness during the day, where your mind is not solving problems, consuming information, or preparing for the next task. Even short pauses, such as sitting quietly for a minute or breathing without distraction, give the brain a chance to release built-up tension. These small breaks may seem insignificant, but they help restore mental space that focus depends on. Another habit that strongly affects mental energy is constant task switching, where attention jumps repeatedly from one activity to another. Each switch forces the brain to restart focus, and over time, this repeated restarting becomes exhausting. When you stay with one task slightly longer, even if productivity feels slower, your mind saves energy and becomes more stable. Screen habits also play a powerful role in mental exhaustion, especially when the brain is exposed to constant notifications, scrolling, and visual stimulation. This keeps the mind alert even when nothing important is happening, preventing true mental rest. Reducing unnecessary screen use allows the brain to calm down and makes it easier to focus later. Emotional habits quietly drain mental energy as well, particularly when stress, frustration, or worry are ignored or pushed aside. Unprocessed emotions remain active in the background of the mind, using energy without your awareness. Simply noticing these emotions calmly, without judging or reacting, reduces their mental cost. It is also important to adjust expectations about constant focus and productivity. The mind is not designed to stay sharp all day, and expecting it to do so creates frustration and inner pressure. Accepting natural fluctuations in energy helps prevent unnecessary mental strain. When these small changes are practiced consistently, mental energy begins to stabilize instead of leaking away. Focus does not return suddenly, but it strengthens quietly as the mind feels safer and less pressured. In the next chapter, we will explore simple ways to rebuild focus gently, even when your mind still feels tired and slow. Chapter 4. Rebuilding focus without forcing it. When your mind feels exhausted, trying to force focus often makes concentration feel even harder, because pressure creates tension, and tension consumes mental energy. An exhausted mind needs safety and calm before it can focus again. Understanding this changes how you approach attention and effort. Focus begins to return when the mind feels allowed to move slowly instead of being pushed to perform. When you give yourself permission to work at a gentler pace, the inner resistance starts to soften. This softness makes it easier for attention to settle naturally. One helpful way to rebuild focus is by lowering the intensity of tasks rather than avoiding them completely. Instead of demanding full concentration, you allow partial attention and gradual engagement. Over time, this gentle exposure strengthens focus without overwhelming the mind. Creating a calm environment also supports focus recovery, especially when mental energy is low. Reducing noise, clutter, and unnecessary interruptions gives the brain fewer things to manage at once. A calmer space signals safety to the mind and helps attention stay steady. Another important factor is how you speak to yourself during moments of distraction. Harsh self-talk creates pressure and frustration, which quickly drains remaining mental energy. When your inner voice becomes calmer and more supportive, the mind relaxes and focus improves. It is also helpful to work in shorter periods when rebuilding focus. Brief sessions of attention, followed by small breaks, respect the mind's limits. This rhythm allows energy to recover instead of being depleted further. Rebuilding focus is not about discipline alone, but about trust between you and your mind. When the mind feels understood instead of controlled, it becomes more cooperative. Focus returns gradually as this trust grows. Progress may feel slow at first, but each calm moment of attention strengthens mental stability. Over time, focus becomes easier to access without strain. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how patience and consistency quietly rebuild long-term concentration. When you begin rebuilding focus after mental exhaustion, patience matters more than intensity, because an exhausted mind does not respond well to pressure or urgency. If you try to rush concentration, attention tightens and slips away, creating frustration instead of clarity. Allowing yourself to move slowly gives the mind space to relax and feel safe again. Consistency plays a quiet but powerful role in restoring focus, because the brain learns from repeated calm experiences rather than sudden effort. Each time you return to a task gently, without judging yourself for distraction, you show your mind that focus does not have to feel stressful or threatening. Over time, this repeated calm response reshapes how attention naturally returns. It is important to accept that focus will feel uneven while your mental energy is still recovering. Some days your attention will feel clearer and steadier, while other days it may feel dull, slow, or scattered again. Accepting these fluctuations prevents disappointment from turning into tension, which would otherwise drain energy and delay recovery. Another helpful shift is reducing the emotional importance you attach to focusing perfectly. When focus becomes a measure of discipline, intelligence, or self-worth, the mind feels watched and pressured. When focus is treated as a natural mental state that comes and goes, attention feels lighter and easier to access. Gentle routines support focus because they reduce decision-making and mental load. Doing certain tasks at familiar times or in familiar environments signals safety and predictability to the brain. This stability frees mental energy that can be used for sustained attention instead of constant adjustment. It also helps to notice small improvements rather than waiting for complete mental clarity. Even a few minutes of calm focus is a meaningful sign that your mind is healing. Recognizing these moments reinforces positive patterns and encourages the brain to continue cooperating. Rebuilding focus is not about controlling attention, but about creating conditions where attention feels welcome instead of forced. When the mind feels respected and understood, it slowly offers focus back without resistance. In the next chapter, we will explore how emotional pressure quietly interferes with focus and how releasing that pressure restores mental clarity over time. Chapter 5. How emotional pressure steals your focus. Emotional pressure is one of the most common yet least noticed reasons why focus feels difficult when the mind is exhausted, because emotions quietly consume mental energy even when you are not thinking about them directly. Stress, worry, self-doubt, and unspoken expectations stay active in the background of the mind, using attention without asking permission. This hidden activity leaves less mental space available for clear and steady focus. When emotional pressure builds, the mind becomes busy trying to manage feelings instead of concentrating on the present task. You may notice that your thoughts keep drifting back to concerns, past conversations, or imagined outcomes, even when you are trying to focus on something simple. This happens because the mind naturally prioritizes unresolved emotions over external tasks. Many people respond to emotional pressure by ignoring it and pushing themselves to focus anyway. While this may work briefly, it creates inner conflict, where part of the mind is working and another part is struggling emotionally. This inner tension quietly drains energy and makes sustained attention harder to maintain. Self-pressure plays a major role in this process, especially when you expect yourself to stay focused despite feeling mentally tired. Thoughts like, "I should be able to concentrate," or "something is wrong with me," increase emotional strain. The more you judge yourself, the more pressure the mind carries, and the weaker focus becomes. Emotional pressure also increases sensitivity to distractions. Small interruptions, noises, or changes feel more disturbing because the mind is already overloaded. Instead of filtering distractions calmly, attention reacts quickly and breaks easily. Reducing emotional pressure does not mean removing all stress from life, but learning to relate to it differently. When you allow yourself to acknowledge stress without fighting it, emotional energy begins to settle. This settling frees mental space that focus depends on. Simple awareness can already reduce pressure. Noticing how you feel, naming it calmly, and allowing it to exist without judgment reduces the effort the mind spends resisting emotions. As resistance lowers, mental clarity slowly improves. Understanding the connection between emotional pressure and focus is important because focus cannot fully return while the mind feels internally strained. When emotional load is reduced, attention becomes steadier without extra effort. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring practical ways to release emotional pressure and protect your focus gently. Releasing emotional pressure begins with understanding that emotions do not disappear just because you ignore them, and when they are pushed away, they continue working quietly in the background of the mind. An exhausted mind already has limited energy, and carrying unacknowledged emotions adds extra weight that makes focus feel even more difficult. When emotions are allowed space, they use less energy and stop interfering as strongly with attention. One gentle way to reduce emotional pressure is by slowing down your inner response instead of reacting immediately to every feeling. When stress or frustration appears, you do not need to solve it right away or judge it as a problem. Simply noticing what you feel and allowing it to exist without resistance helps the mind relax and frees mental space. Another helpful approach is lowering unrealistic expectations you place on yourself during mentally tired moments. Expecting sharp focus when your mind is exhausted creates disappointment and self-criticism, which increases emotional load. When you adjust expectations to match your energy level, pressure reduces and focus becomes more accessible. It is also important to change how you speak to yourself internally, because harsh inner dialogue keeps emotional tension active. Thoughts that blame or criticize create stress even when nothing else is wrong. A calmer, kinder inner tone helps the mind feel safer and more willing to focus. Emotional pressure often increases when you feel rushed or behind, making the mind constantly think about what should happen next. Slowing your pace slightly and allowing tasks to take the time they need reduces this urgency. When urgency fades, attention becomes steadier and less reactive. Creating small emotional boundaries during the day can also protect focus. This may mean limiting how much you think about problems when working, or giving emotions a specific time later instead of letting them interrupt everything. These boundaries help the mind stay present without suppressing feelings. It is important to remember that emotional clarity supports focus, not perfection. You do not need to feel calm all the time to concentrate, but you do need to feel safe enough internally. Safety reduces resistance, and reduced resistance allows focus to return naturally. As emotional pressure slowly decreases, the mind feels lighter and less crowded. Attention becomes easier to hold, not because you are forcing it, but because fewer things are pulling it away. In the next chapter, we will explore how physical states like rest, sleep, and body tension influence mental focus more than most people realize. Chapter 6. How your physical state affects focus. When your mind feels exhausted, it is easy to forget that focus is deeply connected to the physical state of your body, not just your thoughts or emotions. The brain depends on physical signals like rest, movement, breathing, and overall body comfort to maintain attention. When the body is strained, tense, or poorly rested, the mind naturally struggles to stay clear and focused. Sleep plays a major role in this connection because without proper rest, the brain cannot fully reset its attention systems. Even if you are awake and functioning, lack of quality sleep reduces mental sharpness and makes focus feel fragile. This is why concentration often feels hardest after nights of light, broken, or restless sleep. Body tension also quietly interferes with focus, especially when stress is held in the shoulders, neck, jaw, or chest. This tension sends constant signals to the brain that something is wrong, keeping part of the mind alert and distracted. When the body relaxes even slightly, the brain receives a signal of safety that supports calm attention. Breathing patterns matter more than most people realize when it comes to mental clarity. Shallow, rushed breathing keeps the nervous system active and alert, making it harder for the mind to settle. Slower, deeper breathing gently calms the nervous system and creates conditions where focus feels easier to maintain. Movement is another important factor because long periods of physical stillness can reduce mental energy instead of preserving it. Gentle movement, such as walking or stretching, increases blood flow to the brain and refreshes attention. This is why short movement breaks often restore clarity better than forcing yourself to sit still. Ignoring physical needs often leads people to blame themselves for poor focus, when the real issue lies in body fatigue. Hunger, dehydration, and discomfort quietly drain mental energy and reduce attention span. Meeting basic physical needs supports focus in simple but powerful ways. Understanding this body-mind connection helps you approach focus more realistically. Instead of forcing your mind to work harder, you learn to support it through physical care. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring small physical adjustments that gently improve focus throughout the day. Improving focus through physical support does not require extreme routines or major lifestyle changes, because an exhausted mind benefits more from small, consistent adjustments than from sudden intensity. When the body feels supported, the mind does not have to work as hard to stay alert and present. These simple physical signals quietly tell the brain that it is safe to slow down and concentrate. One of the easiest ways to support focus is by improving how you rest between activities, not just how long you sleep at night. Short moments of physical relaxation during the day, such as loosening your shoulders or sitting comfortably, reduce background tension that distracts the mind. When the body feels less tight, attention naturally becomes steadier. Hydration and nutrition also influence mental clarity more than most people realize, especially when the mind already feels tired. Dehydration and irregular eating subtly reduce brain efficiency, making focus feel weaker and slower. Providing your body with regular nourishment helps stabilize energy levels and prevents unnecessary mental fatigue. Posture plays a quiet but important role in attention because slouching or physical discomfort sends stress signals to the brain. Sitting or standing in a way that feels balanced and supported reduces physical strain and improves mental alertness. Even small posture adjustments can change how focused you feel. Light exposure also affects focus, particularly natural light, which helps regulate the body's internal rhythm. Spending time in brighter environments during the day supports alertness and mental clarity. Poor lighting, especially for long periods, can increase tiredness and make focusing harder. Breathing awareness can be gently used throughout the day to reset focus without effort. Taking a few slow, deep breaths helps calm the nervous system and clears mental noise. This simple practice reconnects the body and mind in moments when focus feels scattered. These physical adjustments work best when they are approached without pressure or perfection. You do not need to optimize everything at once to see improvement. Supporting the body in small ways gradually restores mental clarity. As physical strain decreases, the mind feels less burdened and more cooperative. Focus becomes easier to access because fewer signals are competing for attention. In the next chapter, we will explore how environment and surroundings quietly shape your ability to focus when your mind feels exhausted. Chapter 7. How your environment shapes your focus. When your mind feels exhausted, your surroundings quietly play a much bigger role in focus than most people realize, because the brain is constantly responding to what it sees, hears, and senses, even when you are not aware of it. A busy or uncomfortable environment keeps the mind alert and reactive, making it harder to settle into calm attention. When the environment feels safe and simple, the mind uses less energy just to cope. Clutter is one of the most common environmental drains on focus, because every object in your space competes for a small amount of your attention. Even when you are not consciously looking at clutter, your brain still processes it in the background. This hidden processing uses mental energy that could otherwise support concentration. Noise also affects focus deeply, especially when the mind is already tired. Sudden sounds, constant background noise, or voices can keep part of the mind on alert, waiting for interruption. A quieter environment, or even steady soft sounds, allows attention to remain more stable and relaxed. Lighting plays a subtle but powerful role in mental clarity as well. Harsh or dim lighting can increase eye strain and mental fatigue, making focus feel heavier. Softer, natural light helps the brain stay awake without feeling overwhelmed, supporting longer periods of calm attention. The way your workspace is arranged also influences how easily you can focus. When essential items are within reach and distractions are kept away, the mind feels less scattered. A simple and intentional setup reduces decision-making and mental friction. Your environment also affects emotional comfort, which directly impacts focus. Spaces that feel tense, crowded, or uncomfortable increase inner stress even if you are not aware of it. When a space feels calm and familiar, the mind relaxes and becomes more willing to stay present. Changing your environment does not require perfection or expensive setups. Even small adjustments such as clearing one surface or choosing a quieter corner can noticeably improve focus. These changes send gentle signals of safety and order to the mind. As your environment becomes more supportive, focus begins to feel less like a struggle and more like a natural response. Attention flows more easily when fewer external demands compete for it. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how to create focus-friendly environments even in busy or shared spaces. Creating a focus-friendly environment does not mean removing every distraction or controlling everything around you, because that is often unrealistic and can add more pressure to an already tired mind. What matters more is reducing unnecessary strain, so the brain does not have to work hard just to feel comfortable. Even in imperfect surroundings, small supportive changes can make focus feel noticeably easier. When you cannot fully control noise or activity around you, the mind benefits from predictable and consistent background conditions. Steady sounds, such as a fan or soft ambient noise, are easier for the brain to ignore than sudden or changing noises. Predictability allows attention to settle because the mind no longer needs to stay alert for interruption. Visual simplicity also helps when mental energy is low, especially in shared or busy spaces. Keeping only what you need in your immediate view reduces background processing that quietly drains attention. When the eyes see less, the mind feels less crowded and more stable. It is also helpful to associate certain spaces with calm focus rather than stress or urgency. When you repeatedly use a space gently, without forcing productivity, the brain begins to link that environment with safety and steadiness. Over time, simply entering that space can make focus feel more natural. Personal comfort plays a strong role in how the environment affects attention. Temperature, seating comfort, and physical ease all influence whether the mind can relax. When the body feels uncomfortable, part of the mind stays busy reacting to it, reducing focus without you realizing why. Even in shared environments, small personal boundaries can protect attention. This may include choosing specific times for focused work, using simple signals to reduce interruption, or mentally separating your task from surrounding activity. These boundaries help the mind feel contained instead of scattered. It is important to remember that focus improves when the environment feels supportive, not demanding. You do not need the perfect space to concentrate, only a space that does not constantly pull at your attention. Removing a little strain often does more than adding strict rules. As your surroundings become calmer and more intentional, the mind slowly learns that it does not need to stay alert all the time. This sense of ease allows attention to remain steady for longer periods. In the next chapter, we will explore how habits and routines help protect focus when your mind feels exhausted. Chapter 8. How gentle routines protect your focus. When your mind feels exhausted, routines become important not because they force discipline, but because they reduce the number of decisions your brain has to make each day. Every decision, even a small one, uses mental energy, and when energy is already low, these small costs add up quickly. Gentle routines protect focus by creating familiarity and predictability, allowing the mind to relax instead of constantly adjusting. A helpful routine does not need to be strict or perfectly timed, but it should feel supportive rather than demanding. When you follow the same general order for daily activities, the brain knows what to expect and stops scanning for what comes next. This sense of knowing reduces background stress and frees attention for the task in front of you. Morning and evening routines are especially useful because they shape how mental energy starts and ends each day. Beginning the day slowly, without rushing into stimulation, helps preserve focus for later hours. Ending the day with calming habits allows the mind to release unfinished thoughts instead of carrying them into rest. Routines also help separate focus time from rest time, which is important for an exhausted mind. When everything blends together, the brain never fully relaxes and never fully concentrates. Clear but gentle boundaries allow attention to engage when needed and disengage without guilt. It is important to keep routines flexible because rigid routines create pressure that undermines their benefit. If you miss a routine or change it, the goal is not to feel failure, but to return calmly when possible. Flexibility keeps routines supportive instead of stressful. Simple, repeated actions, such as preparing your workspace the same way or starting tasks with the same calming step, signal safety to the brain. These signals help the mind shift into focus more easily. Over time, the routine itself becomes a doorway into concentration. Routines work best when they are paired with self-compassion rather than high expectations. You are not trying to maximize productivity, but to protect your mental energy. This mindset allows focus to grow without strain. As routines gently stabilize your days, attention begins to feel more available and less fragile. Focus returns not through effort, but through reduced mental noise. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how to build routines that support focus without making life feel restricted or mechanical. Building routines that truly protect focus requires understanding that routines are meant to support your energy, not control your behavior or turn your day into a rigid structure. When routines feel heavy or strict, the mind resists them, and that resistance quietly drains attention. A routine should feel like a soft guide that helps your mind settle, not a rule that pressures you to perform. One effective way to keep routines gentle is to focus on consistency rather than perfection. Doing something in a similar way most days is far more helpful than trying to do it perfectly every time. This consistency creates familiarity, and familiarity reduces mental effort because the brain no longer needs to figure out what to do next. It is also helpful to design routines around how your energy naturally flows instead of how you think it should flow. Some parts of the day feel clearer while others feel slower, especially when the mind is exhausted. When routines respect these natural rhythms, focus feels easier and less forced. Routines work best when they include intentional pauses rather than constant activity. Short moments of rest built into your day give the mind a chance to release tension before it builds too high. These pauses protect focus by preventing exhaustion instead of trying to fix it afterward. Another important aspect of gentle routines is allowing room for flexibility and change. Life does not move in straight lines, and rigid routines break easily under pressure. Flexible routines adapt with you, helping your mind stay calm even when plans shift. Repeating simple grounding actions at the start of focused work can also strengthen routines. This might be a few deep breaths, adjusting your posture, or briefly organizing your space. These small actions signal the brain that it is safe to focus now. Over time, these gentle routines become familiar mental anchors. The mind begins to associate them with calm attention instead of effort. Focus then arrives more naturally, without resistance or struggle. The true purpose of routine is not to make you productive every moment, but to protect your limited mental energy. When routines serve this purpose, focus feels steadier and less fragile. In the next chapter, we will explore how patience and long-term thinking help focus grow stronger, even after long periods of mental exhaustion. Chapter 9. The role of patience in restoring focus. When your mind has been exhausted for a long time, patience becomes one of the most important qualities for restoring focus, because attention does not return on command or on a fixed timeline. An exhausted mind needs repeated experiences of calm and safety before it begins to trust focus again. If you expect quick results, disappointment creates pressure, and that pressure quietly pushes focus further away. Many people lose patience because they remember how easily they used to concentrate in the past, and they compare their current state to that memory. This comparison creates frustration and self-doubt, which increases mental strain instead of reducing it. Letting go of comparison allows the mind to recover at its own natural pace. Patience helps because it changes how you respond to moments of distraction. Instead of reacting with irritation or force, you learn to notice distraction calmly and return attention gently. This gentle return teaches the brain that losing focus is not a threat, but a normal part of recovery. Long-term focus is built through repeated small moments of attention, not through one perfect session of concentration. Each calm attempt, even if brief, strengthens mental stability. Over time, these small moments connect and form longer periods of focus without extra effort. It is also important to understand that healing mental exhaustion is not a straight path. Some days you will feel clearer, and other days focus may feel just as difficult as before. Patience prevents these fluctuations from turning into discouragement, which would otherwise slow progress. A patient mindset allows you to see focus as a relationship rather than a skill to control. The more gently you treat your mind, the more cooperative it becomes. Trust grows slowly, and with trust, focus becomes steadier. Patience also protects you from overloading yourself when focus starts to improve. When clarity returns, there is often a temptation to do too much at once. Moving slowly prevents relapse into exhaustion and protects long-term attention. Over time, patience reshapes how your mind approaches effort, attention, and rest. Focus begins to feel less fragile and more reliable, not because you forced it, but because you gave it time to rebuild. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how long-term thinking helps maintain focus even during difficult or demanding periods. Long-term thinking becomes essential when you are rebuilding focus after mental exhaustion, because attention strengthens slowly and depends on how consistently you protect it over time. When you think only in short results, every distracted moment feels like failure, which creates pressure and emotional strain. A long-term view allows you to see focus as something that grows gradually through care rather than force. An exhausted mind improves when it feels trusted instead of constantly tested. If you keep checking whether your focus has returned, you create subtle tension that interrupts recovery. Allowing focus to develop in the background without constant evaluation gives the mind space to settle naturally. Long-term thinking also helps you pace your effort more wisely. Instead of using all your energy on days when focus feels slightly better, you learn to stop before exhaustion returns. This restraint protects progress and prevents the cycle of overdoing and crashing that weakens attention. It is helpful to remember that focus is influenced by many small factors working together, not one single habit or technique. Sleep, emotions, routines, environment, and patience all interact slowly over time. When you respect this process, you stop expecting instant clarity and begin noticing steady improvement. Patience allows you to stay calm during setbacks, which are a normal part of recovery. On days when focus feels weak again, a patient mindset prevents panic or self-criticism. This calm response keeps mental energy stable instead of draining it further. Another benefit of long-term thinking is that it changes how you define progress. Progress is no longer perfect focus, but reduced resistance, less frustration, and quicker recovery after distraction. These signs show that your mind is healing, even if focus is not yet strong. When you stop rushing the process, your mind begins to associate focus with safety instead of effort. Attention feels less like something you must chase, and more like something that arrives when conditions are right. This shift makes focus more reliable and less fragile. Over time, patience reshapes your relationship with attention, teaching you to work with your mind instead of against it. Focus becomes steadier, not because you demand it, but because you allow it to grow at its natural pace. In the next chapter, we will explore how to maintain focus during busy or demanding periods without falling back into mental exhaustion. Chapter 10. Maintaining Focus during busy and demanding periods. When life becomes busy or demanding, maintaining focus requires a different approach than during calm periods, because an exhausted mind cannot handle the same intensity without slipping back into fatigue. During these times, the goal is not to maximize concentration, but to protect it from being drained too quickly. Understanding this shift helps you stay focused without pushing yourself into exhaustion again. One important skill during busy periods is learning to simplify your attention instead of spreading it thin. When too many tasks compete for your focus, the mind becomes overwhelmed and loses clarity. Choosing fewer priorities and letting go of non-essential demands allows attention to stay steadier and more controlled. Busy periods often create a sense of urgency that pressures the mind to rush. This urgency increases mental tension and reduces focus, even when you're working harder. Slowing your internal pace, even if external demands remain high, helps the mind stay clear and reduces mistakes caused by mental fatigue. It is also helpful to adjust expectations during demanding times, because expecting the same level of focus as during relaxed periods creates frustration. Accepting that focus may be shorter and less intense protects your mental energy. This acceptance prevents self-criticism from adding unnecessary strain. Regular mental check-ins become especially important when life feels full. Briefly noticing how tired or tense your mind feels allows you to adjust before exhaustion deepens. These small moments of awareness help prevent focus from collapsing completely. Protecting rest during busy periods is not optional, even if it feels inconvenient. Without moments of mental recovery, focus weakens quickly and becomes unreliable. Short breaks, quiet moments, or reduced stimulation help stabilize attention when demands are high. It is also important to avoid filling every free moment with thinking or stimulation during these times. Allowing the mind to be idle, even briefly, helps release accumulated tension. This mental space supports clearer focus when you return to tasks. Maintaining focus during demanding periods is about balance, not strength. When you respect your limits and reduce unnecessary pressure, attention becomes more resilient. In the final part, we will bring everything together and explore how to carry this calm, focused mindset forward in daily life. Bringing everything together, it becomes clear that focus is not something you force into existence, but something you protect through understanding, patience, and care, especially when your mind feels exhausted. When you stop treating focus as a performance and start treating it as a condition that depends on how safe and supported your mind feels, attention becomes easier to access. This shift alone reduces much of the pressure that silently drains mental energy. One of the most important lessons is learning to listen to your mind instead of fighting it. When focus fades, it is often a signal that something needs rest, simplicity, or emotional space. Responding with awareness instead of frustration prevents exhaustion from deepening and allows clarity to return gradually. Carrying this approach into daily life means accepting that focus will never feel perfect or constant. Some days your attention will feel strong and steady, while other days it may feel slower and more fragile. When you allow these changes without judgment, the mind remains calmer and recovers more quickly. It is also helpful to remember that small supportive actions matter more than dramatic changes. Gentle routines, calmer environments, emotional awareness, physical care, and patience all work together quietly in the background. None of them need to be extreme to be effective. As you move forward, focus becomes something you return to again and again, not something you lose permanently. Each time you choose calm over pressure, understanding over self-criticism, and patience over urgency, you strengthen your ability to concentrate without exhaustion. This builds long-term mental stability rather than short bursts of forced attention. Mental clarity grows when the mind feels respected and trusted. When you give yourself permission to work within your limits, focus becomes more reliable and less draining. Over time, attention feels less like a struggle and more like a natural state you can return to. The goal is not to eliminate mental tiredness completely, but to know how to respond to it wisely. With this understanding, exhaustion no longer controls your focus. Instead, you learn how to work with your mind in a way that supports clarity, calm, and steady attention. As this audiobook comes to an end, remember that restoring focus is a gentle process, not a race. Each calm choice you make supports your mind's recovery. With patience and care, focus becomes something you carry forward into life, even during demanding moments, without losing yourself along the way.